Happy Friday, everybody. Greetings and welcome to the Dojo's weekly fights. I'm so excited I'm going to go tweet about them. All right. I've done it. I've tweeted. You've done it. You've watched somebody tweet. You have been there when somebody used social media to no purpose. I'm going to run and get my kid into pajamas and then run back and help people register for the tournament. So, yeah, be right back. Woo. Hoop, 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 hoop. The sound is back on. Good evening, folks. Good evening. Welcome, welcome. This connection was closed? What? There we go. Play chess online. All right. So, what is up, Twitch? What is up, YouTube? How are folks doing tonight? I am without my extra big écran, so I'm just hoping to check. Just hoping to check if the board is displayed more or less appropriately here. Hey, very kind DH Germany. Yeah, you know, I mean, life is not simple for anyone, even people as lucky and well off as we are. So, you know, we've had ups and downs today, like most days. But yeah, it's gone all right. I kept my cool all day. Seriously, Nolan? First time? Welcome to the dojo, Nolan Pruess. Have you heard of us before? Do you know what it is you're watching? Do you know what Friday night fights are? And DH Germany, I hope that you and your family are well too. Yeah, you know, like I started off my morning with the last round of the Weissenhaus tournament, where Vincent Keimer finished off an incredible run with another complicated game against Fabiano Caruana. A little bit less complicated than some of the other ones. It was like by his standards, Vincent had like 30 minutes left at the end of the game, so he could have done something even a little more difficult, apparently. But he made it through. He held on. He drew the game and won the match. Magnus played an exciting game against Sindarov. So that was a great start to the day. You know, I appreciate and thank my partner for doing a lot of work in the mornings with the kids so that I could cover that tournament all week, 8 days in a row. And then you know, I took a turn with the kids. My partner got some work done. She's got a more stressful job than I do. And, okay, you know us through our podcasts, and we actually were recommended by the algorithm. That's crazy. We always feel like we're on the algorithm's bad side, Nolan. Who knows to what extent that's true, you know? Everybody always thinks that they're worth more and someone's keeping them down, right? But yeah, what we fight on Friday evening are battles against each other. So basically, you know, viewers go after each other. We've got two tournaments that we have set up as arenas on chess.com. So if you, I don't know if you're probably not a member of our chess.com club yet, but if you wanted to play tonight, you or Snuffox seems to be in the mood for a fight. If anyone wants to play, you have to go through chess.com, join this Chess Dojo Club, and then you'll see, when I scroll down here, see how it says upcoming events, Friday night fights. Those are the tournaments, depending whether you're over or under 1600. You pick one of these two tournaments, and then, you know, you just get in there and play some games. Play a game with someone else. Sorry, I'm so used to saying some games. This is classical chess, so the time control is going to be long, and you're going to want to play one game. Normally, an arena, you know, the word arena is normally, you imagine somebody playing 153 bullet games in 2 hours. You know, while berserking and so forth. But in our case, this is classical chess. So, you know, one game is plenty good. You put it all on the line. in a single game, make a maximum effort, and come out of it feeling tired, but somehow great. Yeah, Kraai, welcome back to planet Earth. I hope the atmosphere was reasonably good today. And I'm not audible, Snuffox. Other people seem to hear me. Whoops, you made me click into this thing. My levels look pretty normal here. I can turn it up slightly if you guys want. I don't mind. I don't mind making it just a little bit louder. I can make it more louder than that if anyone wants. You're a fan of classical, Nolan Cruz? Are you? Did you follow some of the tournament this week? Because Vincent, oh man, what a tournament performance. Magnus also did really well in this tournament. You know, even though he lost the match to Vincent, he won his 4 classical games not in the match with Vincent. His other 2 matches, he won 2-0. So he actually scored 4.5 out of 6. The same score as Vincent in 6 classical games. So Magnus had a pretty good performance as well, despite getting pretty conclusively handled by Vincent in their match. The ratings on chess.com, yeah, like your chess.com rapid rating. If it's over 1600, play in the 1600 plus arena. If it's under 1600, play in the under 1600 arena. If you're between 15 to 1700, you could play up or down depending how you're feeling tonight. So Sindarov also had like an incredible run, you know, exceeding all expectations. But did get, you know, pretty beat down by Magnus yesterday and today, especially yesterday. Whew! Magnus gave him a hell of a beat down. And I think one really fun thing about this tournament is we got to see Magnus play several barn burners, you know, instead of grinding. And of course, I love seeing Magnus grind. It's one of the greatest things of the 21st century, right? Magnus grinding. But one of the reasons he grinds is because the other top players are so good and they know their opening so well and they're always in familiar structures that he can't get them into a lot of wild fights very easily, right? With Fischer Random, he had at least 3 just like brutal slugfests. I would even say 4. Like the game he lost to Vincent was a pretty all-out brawl. So seeing Magnus in these like dynamic, you know, sharp tactical games was super fun. Super fun to see. You got to see the sharpness of his tactical sword like you don't normally see it exposed in that way. So it was really cool. You wish you could attend the Crazy Open Freestyle tourney. I just heard about it this morning. Some people in chat informed me. I wasn't up on it. Apparently it's something like April 17th through 21st in Karlsruhe in Germany. $300,000 of prizes. And Magnus Carlsen himself participating. And maybe something like 2,000 people registered for the tournament already. What a huge story. How did I not know? But I'm thinking of hopping on a plane and hitting up Karlsruhe for that. We'll see. I just found out about it. It's a lot of logistics, so right now it's just a dream. You might need to join our club first, Checks M. Yeah. And here's the link to our club. And that's how chess.com runs most of its tournaments. You have to be part of whatever club set up the tournament. For sure, Nolan, it's tough to play 960 at Blitz. Much more fun to play it at a slower time control. Well, I find even normal chess more fun to play at a slower time control because I, will struggle to keep up with it. Otherwise. All right, Snuff Fox, it looks like you found your way into the tournament. Good job. Good work. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, pretty good day. Pretty good day. Good evening, Summoner. How are you doing now? I guess while we're hanging out, I'll just create some tournaments for tomorrow morning as well. So you can see how it's done. Basically, you click Create Tournament, and you scroll down to Club Arena, play against other club members, right? And then you set a name for it. So tomorrow we'll have Saturday Rapid 1700 plus. It'll be a 3-hour arena, following the most normal setup. On Saturdays, we normally do 15 plus 5 at 9:30 a.m. Pacific for 3 hours. That's our most typical thing. So it'll be 9:30. And for some reason on chess.com, you have to set the time like 1 or 2 minutes ahead to get the time that you want. So that'll create another tournament for tomorrow. Copy that link and put it into Mubot's command for the play command. It's another weekly tournament we do. You've never played a classical game. Wow. I see what you mean, DH Germany. Yeah, you're kind of like, you're caught in a tricky position there, right? If you see the emphasis on opening theory as sort of tamping down on chess, but there are things you prefer about the starting position to the weird random starting positions. You've been playing online for 2 years already. Cool. And do you tend to play like rapid chess or blitz or bullet or? I'm going to make another tournament here as we're going. Nope, not a multi-club arena. Fail. Close that. In a multi-club arena, you kind of, like everyone on your team goes against another team. Oh, we should do that sometime though, right? That's really fun too. So we're going to call this one Saturday Rapid 13 to 1700. Do 15-5. Saturday morning. You're trying to keep your level close so you go through all the different time controls. You're trying to balance your speed abilities and your slower abilities. The games will start in about 6 or 7 minutes. Checks. But Acratic, you're playing the Najdorf in classical OTB tournaments or online rapid or online blitz or training games. You're playing it in blitz, right? So, each time control is a different beast. And I can tell you from my own experience, like I do agree with the message of you don't have to worry as much about openings. But from my own experience playing in sort of both norm round robins, but also norm level open tournaments where you're playing against masters. Already 10 years ago, it was like a problem at times to run into people's opening theory. if you're playing principal openings, and people who tended not to like theory would play like second-rate openings or stuff like that. It was an issue, and I think it's gotten much worse in the last 10 years. Now I run into players rated 2,000 instead of 2,300 who are just booked up the wazoo. I don't know. It's not the most fun. Truly, I do think it's a problem. I don't think it helps to worry about it as a problem, but personally, I think it's a problem. I mean, I've played e5, e6, c5, and c6, alternating between all four. So people can't prepare as much for me personally, but they're still just prepared, period, just prepared in general. And because I'm spread between 4 openings instead of 1, I obviously don't. And because I didn't really like studying openings, so I'm not very booked up on those openings when I play them, and I can run into people's prep. Okay, let's put this here. All right, all the tournaments are set up for tomorrow. Okay, let's close that. And all right, I see the Friday Night Fights arenas listed through chess.com's tournament thing. That's kind of cool. Got 5 players there. Yeah, Kratik, I enjoy a certain style of studying openings, yes. But I mean, I found it wasn't enough. For the, for the level I was playing at. Hey, Cross. Hey, Graham Kraka. Wesley Soy is playing in our tournament. Not Wesley So, but Wesley Soy. Excelente. So some advice for those playing, if there's anybody who's new to our tournaments, which I think there might be 1 or 2 today. Once your game starts, my primary recommendation, the point of this tournament, Nolan, is not just that people fight, but also that I comment on their games. Yeah. Nice, Graham Kraka. Is it 5 a.m. here for me? No, it is 8 p.m. right now for me. So I comment the games as much as I can, Nolan, like every Friday evening for Friday Night Fights if I can, and every Saturday morning for our rapid arenas. So here's my advice for those who are about to play in 2 minutes. To basically do the best you can to create a monotasking environment when you're playing your game. So, I was just silencing my phone so it wouldn't beep during the commentary. And you could do the same thing. You can silence your phones so that you're not checking, email or text messages or watching TikToks while you're playing your games. And also, rather importantly, you should mute or pause the stream once your games start, because I might talk about your game And you don't want to hear me talk about your game while you're playing your game. Even if I talk about somebody else's game, you don't want to hear me talk about somebody else's game when you should be concentrating on your game, right? I should get a cool curtain. Oh, for back here, Graham Kraka. This is my dining room. So it's not set up really for yeah, there's an odd number of people in the under 1600 arena right now, but once the tournament kicks off, FXL and everybody else, once the tournament kicks off, anyone who wants to can still join, and people do. People come in late all the time. So if the tournament started right now, it would pair Johnny Linney with FXL and Wesley Soy with Blazing Dynamo, and Far Eastern would be stuck waiting. And as soon as another player joined the tournament, they'll pair them with Far Eastern and they'll get a game. Yeah, another suggestion from Cross Online, but this is like a very high level suggestion, is in addition to monotasking, you could prepare yourself to kind of try and use all your time. Anybody who's newer to playing classical time control games, you might want to allot like 30% of your time for your opening, 40% of your time for your middle game, and 30% for your end game. So plan to really use your time if you have things to think about and know how to do that. But yeah, we can make a shot at that. All right, so games are starting in 15 seconds. Note that chess.com also like sometimes forfeits people for thinking on the first two moves for more than a minute. So you might have to play your first one or two moves slightly quickly, and then hopefully you can settle in and spend an hour or two on the game if you enjoy doing so. I'm going to open up the first games I can find here. Good luck to everybody, and most importantly, I hope everybody enjoys their games. And here we've got Wesley Soy and Blazing Dynamo, and then I'm going to go and open the other arena as well, the 1600 plus arena, and open their games. So the 1600 plus arena has 3 games that started immediately. 2 more players have joined and will probably get paired pretty soon. So there we go. We've got 5 games kicked off. And let me see, of the games I'm watching, where should I first focus? We've got a Sicilian defense from Johnny Linney. Let me try and get back into this Wesley Soy game if I can. Let's see how this works. No, it just doesn't work, period. Friday night fights, games. All right, this is the game I want to kick off with. Wesley Soy against Blazing Dynamo. All right, so we've got a double queen pawn opening here, and white goes knight f3, not going for a queen's gambit-y kind of move just yet, but you can play this later, you know. Actually, I'm getting so annoyed by a certain problem. Let me see if I can fix it. All right. I'm going to try and change a little thing here. It's been bugging me for a while. All right, so I switched the screen capture over here, and now it's going to let me draw arrows again. Phew! All right, hang in there, checks. It should happen very soon. I believe it will. I believe it will happen very soon for you. In the meantime, you're welcome to watch this with us for a little bit. So when white holds back on c4, they might not be planning to play the queen's gambit, but they might still be planning it. So if you're black, you can't say, aha, they're playing, you know, a Collie or a London or a Torre or something. Like, they could just play c4 on move 3 or move 4. So you have to always bear in mind as black that white could still play this move until you feel like they've done something where they're really committed not to. So bishop g4 from black. e3, white does go for what looks kind of like a Collie at this point. And still not playing c4. Still could play it. But yeah, we get a classic Collie with the bishop going to b2. All right. So, one big question is either player going to want to play c5, c4? Either player could try and get a little more of the center. Or the players could just develop their pieces and maneuver without any pawn tension. Now, I had this position in my most recent tournament, actually, just in January. And I think I played here. I got some position like this. And then I went for knight e4 with the point that I could now set up a stone wall with this bishop outside the pawn chain. And I got a pretty decent game out of it. So this is a maneuver that one should be aware of for black, plunking the knight on e4 followed by f5. It's similar to one of the main things that white often does in this line, which is like, let's say, bishop b2, castles, knight e5. One of the most common maneuvers of the Collie with the bishop on b2, right, is plopping a knight in on e5, and then black has to figure out, how do I deal with that thing, right? What do different trades do for me, for my opponent? It can be quite confusing. If you let the knight sit there long enough, then white, again, will play moves like f4 and build up kingside space behind that knight, hoping to turn it into a kingside attack. Okay, we've got bishop d6, played by Blazing Dynamo, and bishop b2 by Wesley Soy. Playing all the normal Collie moves here so far for white, and Blazing Dynamo playing a very solid setup for black, where all the pieces are on reasonably best squares. The bishop got outside the pawn chain, so everything looks comfortable for black. So in theory, white's not putting pressure on black like white's going to get the advantage. But there's the full game to be played, so white's also not messed anything up either by any means. Oh, Lafong! Salut, ça va? Folks, this is going to be a strong recommendation from me. There's a link here for following my old buddy Lafong Hua from Montreal, Canada. Really, really wonderful person. We've been chess friends since we were young. Since I went to Montreal, more than 20 years ago, not knowing anybody there, and he put me up at his house. I guess his parents kind of put me up at his house because he was kind of a kid, and we became friends immediately. You just moved to a new place, still in Montreal, or? So I highly recommend his channel. Give him a follow for sure. He's a great chess player, great chess teacher, great person. Hey, casual player. Yeah, I'm in the dining room today. Been moving around a little bit. I don't have like a dedicated spot in the house for this. Oh, you just bought a place in Montreal. Nice. Congratulations on that. That's super cool. And how much are you streaming these days? A lot? spicy move from the Dynamo. That's aggressive. That tells me, you know, Dynamo might go queen e7 and castle the long way. Yep. Full time. Teaching and streaming. Cool. Yeah, understood. It's late. Have a good night. I'll try and give you a call sometime so we can catch up. Cheers. And thank you for sending your viewers over here to watch our Friday night fights. Yeah. And so for those of you who are going to stick around, welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name's David. I'm a friend of LaFong's. I'm a chess teacher, so for almost 30 years, coming up on my 30-year anniversary as a chess teacher later this year. And what we're doing today is we're having a viewer tournament, viewer matches, Friday night fights. We do them on every Thursday. And the viewers are playing classical chess against each other. So here we're seeing some 45 plus 30 games in the under 1600 group. The over 1600 group plays 90 plus 30. So really a full, slow, serious game. Some people, like my buddy Jesse Kraai, think that you can't play for real online. You can't be fully serious and give it your all and have focus and flow and all that. And every week, this motley crew disproves him, but he doesn't notice it. And they play their hearts out here in these games, and we like to follow, watch, chat about it, maybe learn something. So Blazing Dynamo playing very aggressively, now plopping the knight in the middle of the board with potentially, you know, f5 to follow, or the other knight to f6, depending whether or not they feel the need for the f pawn or not. White seeing aggressive moves from black. How does white feel? How does one react to this kind of thing? Some people get really scared. That is not the best reaction. You don't want to get scared. In fact, you want to look at your most direct attempts to counter what your opponent's doing immediately. You don't want to play too many defensive moves or timid moves. So one thing I would immediately look at as white is knight takes e4, d takes e4, knight d2, basically cutting the knot of this, you know, incursion on e4, trying to trade off this piece potentially. Now, as I first look at this option, it doesn't look great to me actually, because we don't really threaten to take on g4 at all, because it'll open up the rook. The bishop's here, and potentially black can even just play queen h4 right away, which is potentially powerful. They can also play f5 first, and now the only downside with f5 is that they might lose this bishop to, you know, it getting trapped. But basically, black just doesn't care. They're too aggressively posted here. So, you know, they would welcome you taking on g4 at any point. Hey, Sacrifice Master, I didn't see the comment you're referring to about music. Maybe my chat didn't show the comment, but yeah, we don't very often play music on our stream. Despite the fact that I love music. But yeah, we breed a pretty focused ambiance, but don't worry, we're gonna have fun too, even if we're focused. Being focused is fun. So this first idea of mine for white doesn't look that good. The second approach for white that would be aggressive would be playing c4, and that's what Wesley Soy did. So big props to Wesley for going c4 and engaging in the center, instead of engaging in some little wimpy moves like knight e1 or, you know, h3, which is just going to play into the fact that black does not care about you taking the bishop on g4, right? They're going to get a raging attack. going here with this bishop and rook. So c4, nice move. The third idea that I could consider for white here would be knight e5. Basically, you come forward when they expect you to fall back, right? And then you're making room to play f3 or f4 and grab more space on the king side in order to defend your king with that space. Those are the three moves I would consider. One thing I want to say, although Wesley Soy is playing great, is Wesley Soy currently has 47 minutes and a half after starting with 45. Blazing Dynamo 38. So Wesley Soy is obviously playing too quickly, right? The point of having a bunch of time on your clock is to use it. And once black's playing h5 and knight e4, for sure you've got stuff to think about as white, right? As I just mentioned, right here already, we've got three candidates, knight e4, c4, and knight e5 that really stand out. And you could already say it's like a pretty interesting situation where your opponent's trying to do things to you, and you could profit from thinking about your stuff, right? So sorry, just cleaning up the chat on YouTube a little bit. If you have something to say, that's fine, and I don't mind what you might have to say, but if you have nothing to say, then don't clog up the chat, please. c4, c6, holding the center solid. That's what I would expect from Blazing Dynamo. White closes the center with c5, an odd decision, again, played in just seconds, while black is, spending time on their moves. And I'm already going to predict that black is going to win this game just off of the time usage. Yeah. I mean, white's playing great moves, so it's not based on black having an advantage or any weakness that I see in white's play other than the speed at which they're playing. In general, the player who spends more time at this level wins. So, imagine you play a game. This is something I've said a couple times before, but it could be said a few times. Imagine you play a game, and in the game, or you watch a game between two players, and they're of similar levels. Well, actually, let's say we don't know what level they are. Just two people are playing. One of them spends 2 minutes thinking about the game, and the other spends 20 minutes thinking about the game. The player who spent 2 minutes thinking would have to be something like 10 times better than the person spending 20 minutes to outplay them, right? They would have to see things 10 times as fast or have a 10 times more efficient way of evaluating or making decisions, right? All in all, they'd have to be somehow like 10 times better than the player they're up against. And that's, So it means like Magnus could treat us like this, right? Magnus could blitz out all these moves and win against us. But the gap has to be incredible to be able to play this quickly and outplay somebody else. Yeah, Jesse did a recent video on YouTube about time people use. Yeah, and there are various reasons. I think Jesse's aware of that point, that newer people don't yet know what to think about often. Knight df6 from black, bringing another piece towards the king side, and white continues the queenside pawn storm. So, I mean, Wesley Soy has very, very good instincts to some extent, right? In that black's doing something and Wesley's responding aggressively, right? By trying to push white's agenda and achieve what white wants to achieve. If the black king ever castles queenside, I mean, white's ready to slaughter him. Or her, or them. But at this kind of pace, you're just going to be missing some things. Black's going to come up with some ideas that you don't fully appreciate when you're going this fast. There's just no way. There's just no way. Now, let's think how we would play this position as black. So this pawn storm's incoming. That means we're kind of dissuaded from castling over here. We could leave the king in the center since white has kind of locked up the center, don't you think? And the e-file's not necessarily locked, but it's not easy to blow it open with this knight outposted here. So if I'm black, maybe I want to push more pawns on the king side and keep attacking. Hello, chess pawn, and very good point, gefilte fish. I agree with your point entirely. If we recognize that people don't know what to think about, we should give them, reasonable advice for how they could move towards improving their time usage. Probably, the first step is recognizing that you should use more time. So it's not like Jesse's saying nothing, right? But the second step could still be offered in the same video, and the second step would have some advice about how you get there, right? Queen to b8. So black tries to make a weakness on white's king side with a threat against h2, right? And white responds in seconds with b5, meaning white overlooked the fact that black had a threat. Now, I don't know if black's threat is good or not, so we're going to try out black's threat, and then we'll see whether or not white should have played b5 or not. But we know white should have thought about it before playing b5. If black's threat against h2 doesn't work, that's sort of a lucky accident for white, who didn't even notice it. And before I get into this calculation, Sacrifice Master had a suggestion for how black should play this position, which was maybe play king d7, connecting all the heavy pieces along the 8th rank, and then play my move g5. That makes total sense, Sacrifice Master. I don't necessarily know whether it's better to play g5 or bring the king up first, as a hilarious way of developing your rooks by coordinating and connecting them. Your king d7 move looks perfectly reasonable, if very funny as well. Like, if someone played king d7 here at first, you might be like, is that a mouse slip? That's so weird. And then you say, oh, okay, yeah, it's on purpose. Personally, I'm not 100% sure where my king is best, so I would lean towards my suggestion of g5, because I know if I want to attack, I probably need g5. I don't see another good way to get this attack started. But Blazing Dynamo saw a real alternative option. The idea is, after b5, you could go trades, and win this pawn with check. King comes here. And then from here, different options for black, from g5, g4, to just retreating with your extra pawn, to knight to g4. But, I'm also not 100% sure how great this is, because we win a pawn, but we don't really start an attack, So if we just keep our bishop from getting trapped, and then white puts their rook opposite our queen, I still am not sure 100% how I'm coordinating black's game. You know what I mean? Like, we're up a pawn, but I'm still not 100% sure what we're doing. But it looks like black could definitely win a pawn, so white should have considered it before playing b5. And black traded on f3 instead of on d2. So now the knight has to take if you want to defend here. It does. Then black plays knight to g4. Interesting. This might even be a stronger threat than winning the pawn immediately. Wow, Blazing Dynamo. I'm very impressed by this idea of not winning the pawn right away, but coming like this, because the threat is actually much stronger with two knights on the board than if we had traded on d2. Yeah. Now there's some more aggressive ideas for black. Let me show you. The first one is this pattern here. Bishop check. So if white, basically, okay, black's threatening to now take on h2, right? So the main candidate moves for white would be g3 and h3. There's also knight e5. Interesting move, right? But let's say white played h3. Well, look at this, by the way, folks. Wesley Soy has finally stopped to calculate right here. And it must be said, for all that they played too quickly up to this point, this is the most critical moment of the game yet. So there's something about them maybe recognizing that the situation is like the kind of... Yeah. All right, I'm back online. I have a suspicion that it's the fault of the Restream service, not actually of OBS. So I'm trying now to stream just straight to Twitch instead of via Restream to Twitch and YouTube. We will see if that works better. Sorry about that, folks. This F6 move is very, very challenging. Black saying you move the knight away and get checkmated, or I take your knight. And given that choice, I almost want to just lose my knight. The question is, can I do something like this? If you take here, I take here. That's somewhat interesting from White's perspective. And if you take here, I'm going to sack the knight. Like so. Like so. Should I take on e6? Should I take on g7? That was sort of my first thought. Sure, maybe let's do this. This takes. This is a little bit more. Are you serious, Rin Twin? You've got friends over to watch the fights together? That is the coolest thing I've ever heard. A chess watch party together? If that's really true, tell me what you and your friends want to see. Tell me which game you want to watch. There's no way, Graham Cracker, you guys are conspiring to make the same joke. But it's very flattering, I guess. It gives me a cool image to imagine people getting together and watching chess for fun in a living room. Oh, the two of you are related. Don't tell me your wives are also twins. Come on. This is getting just silly. This is getting just silly. But anyway, let me know if there's a particular game you guys want to watch. I think this one here that we've picked first is pretty interesting. These kind of, Kali systems are really a classic structure to learn, and these people setting up their attacks with these systems, I think is really interesting. And honestly, even at a master level, as I said, in January at my last tournament, I had this opening with I guess my opponent was maybe 2100 or something like that, and I didn't know how to handle it against them. I didn't know when to trade on e5 or not and how to handle the whole position. If you're all in the same living room, why would you be on like 3 or 4 different computers at the same time to watch? Are you each in a corner with your own like device instead of just having a screen to share? I mean, I've lived my life without a television set, so I don't really know how people use televisions, but I always kind of imagined that there would be like a screen that multiple people would look at the same screen. That was my vision of what American TV life was like. So this line here to me is super fun and cool. This bishop g4 here. We sack our knight to keep the opponent away from h2, and we've got counterattacking chances, and we're winning, 1, 2, maybe even 3 pawns against this knight and making the game harder for black to play. Oh, that's awesome. You guys are teaching me how people use how people use televisions now. You stream to the TV, you mute it, and then everyone turns on the app so you can all chat together online while watching while watching on a real TV. Okay. Crazy cool. Crazy cool. I should get my friends together to watch like a chess match. What I always do is I watch with Kostya and Jesse. We're all on Zoom together watching the same boards and chatting, but being in the same room would be pretty fun. Okay, so you see this is a cool way of turning around who's getting attacked. I hope this looks like a useful technique for all of you. Like f6, it looks like white's about to be dead, and actually we found a way to make the game fun. Make chess fun again. So knight e5, d e5, black just cashes in the pawn, which looks very healthy for black. White plays a5, looking to break black's structure with a6, and this thing will collapse. Very, very strong move from white. An amazing, like, Wesley's understanding to keep going for these things so quickly. Knight c5, collecting a pawn. a6, cracking the structure. Takes, and now you're going to take on c6. I assume Wesley just has such class. There's also like a crazy move, queen c2. Looking for even more. That's also, but that's like a really tactical, like GM move. You would have to really be, yeah, this is like a classy blitz move, right? This is somebody who's got great instincts, has played through hundreds of master games, despite the 1100 rating, and just has like fantastic instincts. You know, grandmasters, they start to like notice little tactical points like this as well. You know, where they're looking for like queen c6 check and other things. So. All right, b takes c6 played. And, yeah, now black needs to coordinate the rooks to deal with this passed c-pawn. The knight doesn't have a great square. The idea of attacking the king is gone. So I think now, basically, you want to castle kingside, bring a rook to c8. If white takes on h5, they take on h5. The pawn goes. You know, black's advantage is not overwhelming. And I wonder after a5 if black needed to somehow hold this structure together. I mean, it's very tempting to take a pawn, of course. But, you know, there is this option of a6, preventing white from breaking your structure. Essentially, you know you're going to get this position. And then, you know, rook b6, queen a4, kind of the moves hanging over your head. But queen a4, castles, queen c6, rook c8, and then you can take on c5. Black's pretty well coordinated as well, and they hold on to their extra pawn. Still, like, you know, a full game in the offing. You know, black has not managed to crush white, but okay. They have pawn. So we get knight c5. Bonsoir, Elise. a6 happened. They trade here, trades here. g6. Okay, so I think this move here, black wants to castle, and they don't want to hang the h5 pawn, right? So they're being... Blazing Dynamo has this level of tactical awareness, right? That they think of moves they want to play, and then they notice resources for the opponent. Unfortunately here, I think you needed to castle and let the pawn go. You had to have a sense beyond that of like, do I have the time to defend all my, you know, my empire of coconuts? You can have it all. The most powerful piece in general is the queen because she can move in lots and lots of directions. Really long distance, really agile as well. That doesn't make sense, checks. 5 of you are waiting for a game and it's not pairing you against each other? I'm going to look into that. Why would that be? The knight has some cool hops. It's quite agile. Friday Night Fights, 1600 plus arena. Snuff Fox waiting for a game. Neforolian has already played and may not be looking for a second game. Chex has been waiting this whole time. The Perfect D-Gen waiting. Why is it not firing off more games? The Perfect D-Gen and Boondock Striker have been paired. They are playing. It just doesn't show it over here. Yeah, 9 Inch Nails. We got to tell Jesse about that song, My Empire of Pawns, of Coconuts. Okay, let's refresh this. So, I'm really sorry, Chex. I don't know what's going on with you not getting paired. I hope you are paired soon. I hope you're in the tournament correctly. Like, Live Chess knows that you're there and waiting for a game. Maybe there's a button you have to click to say you're ready for a game. Kind of guessing here. Oh god, now chess.com's doing the thing where it won't show me the game. There we go. There's the game. Okay. So basically, you don't have time for this because the C pawn is going to be such a problem. Your knight's going to get booted from C5 as white puts queens and rooks on the C file. Right? When they kick the knight, it's going to have to wander somewhere where it can go. That seems obvious, I guess. But look, some of its squares are taken away, so it's going to have to head over here. White's going to put a bishop on A6. Do you see what a menace the C pawn is about to be? G6. White's actually thinking, but this is like the closest thing to a big opportunity for white yet this game, right? You can go after this knight, send it over here, let's say. Play C7, threatening to queen. And when black castles, play bishop A6. And basically, this pawn just got too strong while black was worrying about the H5 pawn. Yeah, man, with Head of Dog, it's been a long, long time. I was a kid. But, yeah, I did have some fights on and around the schoolyard as a kid. And, of course, at home / everywhere with my brother. But I don't think I've had a physical fight since I was in high school or junior high school. Do I want to fight right now? No, I don't miss it. I wouldn't have gone 30 years without a fight if I really were missing it. Yeah. Lots of bad fighting between siblings. All right, look at Wesley Soy giving this some careful consideration. Wow, what got into you today, man, with Head of Dog? Queen C2 from Wesley. I might have got my prediction for this game wrong. Wesley is really producing fine moves for a really long time. I've ruined you with the title of my show, huh? slowly achieved a pernicious brainwashing. Apparently doesn't matter where he's at, Dabo. He's ready to drive to you or anyone. You know, when you say that, head of dog, it makes Dabo start screaming, USA, USA, USA. You should be aware. You risk starting a cheer. In this line I gave just before, maybe there could be a really unusual defense for black where they try to cut off the file, but now it seems unlikely because there will be check and then retaking the file with the rook and then bishop a6. It's really hard to find a defense to queen c2, but I guess that's what we all need to do right now, right? That's what Blazing Dynamo is trying to do. So we also need to come up with the best defense we can offer. So there was a suggestion from chat of bringing the knight to d6. Let's see how that could work. Knight e4, c7, castles, bishop a6. And I think it was here at the end of my line that knight d6 could be tried. Pretty much anything that could happen, according to the rules, Lady Bottom, has happened at some point. Pawns have taken queens. Pawns have delivered checkmate. Pawns have under-promoted to bishops instead of queens in tournament games. You know, when you get your pawn to the end of the board, like what Wesley is trying to do here, you can replace it with any piece you want other than the king. And there are situations where it's better to get a bishop than to get a queen, which is one of the craziest and rarest things that there is in chess. Like, why would you ever want a bishop instead of a queen? And yet even that has happened. I had a game where I under-promoted to a knight in a tournament. You know, and I'm just one person who's played, 1,000 games in tournaments. If you think of all the millions and millions of games that have been played in tournaments around the world, and then all of the billions of games that have been played not in tournaments, just, you know, blitz games online or people hanging out at a chess club together or at a coffee shop, everything has happened. What is a total reset endgame? Queen c2, queen d6 have been played. Oh my gosh, Elise, you saw a double knight under promotion? Oh, someone advanced all their pawns and remade all their pieces? I used to do that to torture kids from this one chess school where they weren't allowed to resign. Because I found it offensive that they wouldn't resign once I was winning. And so I was like, well, if they're not going to resign, I'm going to enjoy this. So I would promote all my pawns to all the pieces, reset the back rank, and then checkmate them in tournaments. It was everyone from this one chess school. Coached by a convicted pedophile. You changed your friend's contact name to Double Knight. Yeah, you'll remember them by that. Oh yeah, that's a trap in the Budapest, right? It's sort of like a famous trap line. Okay, White's going to double up on the C file here, put all that power behind the passed pawn. Ooh, so close. That's where you're moving too fast. 20 seconds. There's a better piece to put on A6 than the rook, right? I think something did happen with the microwave in the kitchen, yeah, but I don't think it was ramen. It's true, Dazzy. And the guy was running a chess program for children. Yeah, Chex, this is every Friday. I know not getting paired is really giving you a huge desire to come back next week. Oh, man. But you guys see why I would prefer the bishop on a6 instead of the rook here? Because it's all about this passed pawn. Very, very hard for black to stop that pawn from queening. First, I would play c7, so this queen doesn't get here. And Rintwin, you are welcome to play at any point, regardless of your rating. Okay? I hope you feel comfortable playing, no matter what your rating is. We have had players in the 200s playing in our tournaments in the past. I see we have somebody rated 500 playing right now. See? So yeah, you're welcome any time. But there's no pressure on you to play. You know, you don't have to play. I don't want anyone to feel embarrassed about their rating. Like when you say your rating is laughable, you're thinking someone might laugh at you. Not here. That I can promise you, nobody's going to laugh at you for your rating here in the Chess Dojo. Like everyone starts at a different point, at a different age, with different knowledge, different natural talents and skills and stuff, you know. So we won't keep you from laughing at your own rating if that's what works for you. Like we believe in freedom, but we're not gonna do that to you. And you know, we've got people rated 200 playing in our tournaments sometimes, and that's fine. We encourage them. Okay, so that other game I was on over here. Right. Okay. Did everybody agree with me about trying to queen this pawn? Did you guys understand how that would be like a great possibility for white here? The move order would also be important because, like, if I take with the bishop here, black has a defense with queen c7. They can block the pawn on a dark square, right? And then it's not easy for white to get through this square here. This may seem blazingly obvious or stupid or something like that, but the way that you queen a pawn is by controlling every square in front of it and then gradually bringing it through those squares, right? So if you go bishop a6 and they go queen c7, it's very hard for white to gain control of c7. You know, because we got a light squared bishop. The only pieces that are going to control c7 for white are the rooks and the queen. So if you play c7 immediately, that gives your rook and queen access to c7. So now you've got that square control. Now all that's left that you need to do to queen that pawn is get control of the last square, and your bishop is perfect for doing that. So you can do this as white, and basically white wins at that point, right? Black's going to lose a rook to the power of this passed pawn. Okay, let's follow how the game goes. White went for rook a6, which looks perfectly logical. Black castles, which is perfectly logical as well. Again, I would strongly consider queen c7, trying to block this pawn still. But castles, c7, hitting the queen, from the side with the rook. So she's going to need to reposition here. Blaze and Dynamo thinking about it here. And so we've got a question about how do you test your chess level? The most obvious way to test your chess level is to play games against other people. If you play them online, you'll get an online rating. If you play them in person in a tournament, you'll get a tournament rating. If you play them in person just casually at like a chess club or something like that, then maybe your opponents would be able to give you an estimate. Like they might be able to, you know, if you play against somebody somewhat experienced at a chess club, they might be able to tell you about how good you seem to them. What's the best online? I think players like Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura are rated as high as like 33, 3400 online. Whereas tournament ratings only go up to about 2,800. But in online, speed chess and blitz, they've got super high ratings. Okay, Queen D7. Covering the promotion square of the pawn a little bit more. Really, Boondock Striker? Congratulations. That's incredible. That's fantastical. That is awesome. Right on. Sometimes a chess game takes a while to fully sink in. Rook c6. Oh man, look at the power behind that pawn. Ay, ay, ay. This, folks, is why I didn't think that black had time to defend the h5 pawn. Getting your biggest win ever is one of the most incredible things there is in chess, isn't it? It's so amazing. Feels so good. Feels so good. A 2,000 rating online on chess.com in rapid. What's it worth compared to a FIDE OTB? Maybe like 1,800 or so since the FIDE rating updates. I don't know immediately, Zobayan, offhand. Let me see if the rating conversions thing is easy to find over on chess.com. So I'll go to chess.com rapid of 2,000, and it's giving me a FIDE rating of 1,800 to 1,850. Ha! Oh no, 1,750 to 1,800. Sorry. No, wait, that's Lead Chess. No, chess.com. Yeah, 1,800 to 1,850. Wow. I nailed it. No, Lead Chess is like even higher. Like 2,000 on chess.com is like, well, I can tell you exactly since I was just on the page. I don't know Lead Chess as much by heart, so I'll go look at it for you. So we're saying at chess.com 1,800-ish rating. Is like a 2,000 Lead Chess rating. So at that level, Lead Chess ratings are about 150 points inflated. Yeah. Okay, knight d6, covering the square. Queen c5, trying to chase the knight out from defending. Oh, it's just brutal. Do you see, folks, how much power is behind this c-pawn? That thing is like headed home. That thing is headed home. Why are they all different? Well, for one thing, some of them use different formula, Zobayan. But another reason the ratings are different is that if somebody joins FIDE, they start off with a provisional rating based on their performance in their first tournaments. If somebody starts on chess.com, they start out with a 1,200 rating, period. If someone starts on Lead Chess, they start off with a 1,500 rating, period. So if the average skill level in chess is something like 700, and Lead Chess starts you out with a 1,500 rating, then ratings on Lead Chess are going to be high compared to, the skill levels that we normally think of. And even on chess.com, starting you at 1,200, the ratings will start high. Now, I think chess.com may have a thing where when you join, they ask you to estimate your level. So you say, like, I'm a beginner, or I've played in tournaments before, and they may sometimes adjust and start some people at, 800 and other people at 1,200 and other people at 1,600. They might do that now to get like a slightly more accurate rating as well. Long ago, it was just 1,200, unless somebody wrote into customer support and was like, I'm starting a new account, I'm already a master. And then we would like estimate a rating to start them at and put that on their account to begin with. But one of the things is they do not all use the same formula. Often it's a zero-sum game, so Bayan, it depends whether or not you're using a system with provisional ratings. So sometimes, like if somebody hasn't played many games yet, you'll adjust their rating more rapidly because you're saying you basically don't know what their real strength is, right? So you've got a new account, you've only played 4 games. And when I say new account, it could be a new USCF membership or FIDE or whatever it could be, right? They may say, oh, we've only seen this person play 3 or 4 games. So we'll adjust their rating rapidly to try and find the right place because we don't really know where it should be. And if you play against somebody who's basically never played, sometimes they'll adjust your rating less, saying we don't have much confidence what that player's strength is, so your rating's only going to go up or down 1 point based on your games against them because they're almost kind of unrated. But once people have established ratings, it usually becomes a zero-sum game. Other than that scenario I'm saying where there's somebody who has like an idle or timed out rating or a new rating or something like that. If you've got people who've each played, 100 games and they play each other in a rating system, normally if you gain 10, your opponent loses 10. If you gain 3, they lose 3, etc. But then also sometimes they jimmy the formulas because they feel like there's been rating inflation or deflation. They may try to get the ratings back in line. So Blazing Dynamo kicks the queen here with the knight that was attacked, and the queen backs off. I thought maybe the best is just to plop the knight here to block the pawn. I don't think that long-term black can defend this position with that amazing pawn, but that was definitely my thought of the most robust defense I could find. Here I thought that if white played queen b4 attacking the knight seemed trapped, actually. Basically, look where it can go. a5 is covered, c5 is covered, d6 we had covered with the rook and queen, and I made sure to stay on that diagonal. d8 is covered by the pawn, and basically no one can defend the knight because rook b8, the pawn is on it. The only way I see to defend the knight is queen c8, and then I thought after bishop a6 that knight should be pretty dead. Yeah. So losing whatever black does. That's a fair assessment, Zobayan. But even if a position is losing whatever you do and an engine says plus whatever, there are still people who are better or worse at like slipping away or setting a trap or putting up a long defense to tire their opponents, or there's still practical something or other. You're 1,800 FIDE. Excellent. What can the Chess Dojo program do for me? Well, you mean our training program or just hanging out on our channels or playing in our tournaments? Are you thinking about the training program? So white backed off with queen c3, a5 from black, bishop a6. If white carefully counted, they would have seen they can just queen here. You've got 3 heavy pieces behind here. So white puts the bishop on a6, which makes sense as well. Attacking the knight and, fighting for the final... Attacking the knight and fighting for the final square for the pawn's promotion. Certainly a good-looking move, but, if you really looked, you'd see you can already... If you really looked and counted, you can already go there. Dabo, you're a master. You're a master. Just trolling him. Okay, the training program, yeah. Cool. You're welcome, Lady Bottom. Oh my gosh, you're saying your OTB rating is actually 1100, Dabo? That is insane. Man, some people are going to be really tilted if they ever play you in a tournament again. That is crazy, folks. Dabo's rated 1100 USCF and 2200 online. And worth the 2200, by the way, might I say. Like, I think Dabo is approximately national master level, truly. And yeah, you could get a title if you wanted to. Wow. Okay, let me answer Chex' question. So obviously I could tell you a million things about the training program, Chex, and if you want more info, just ask me more info or specific questions, right? But at a basic level, what the training program would do is it would give you a clear plan for how to train. So you wouldn't waste any time wondering what you should do, how to get better, what to spend your time on. It would just tell you that. You see what I mean? If you don't train at all, the training program, knowing how to train or what to train won't help you, nor will the training program raise your rating if you're not actually training. But if you're training 3, 4, 5 hours a week, the training program can tell you what to do with your time so you don't waste that time deciding what to study, or so you don't waste that time doing studying or practicing that's not actually very beneficial for you. So it can make your time very effective, and it can then push you up, a couple hundred points over time. There is no base level that needs to be achieved before joining Chess Dojo Rin Twin. I mean, you can start by hanging out with us here on our streams and seeing if you like us, if you like the teaching style, if you like the philosophy about how to spend one's time and how to think about the game and so forth. And but no, there's no base level. We have a training program. The bottom level of our training program, which is even, the training program is already for people who are more serious than the people who are just on average hanging out on stream here with us, right? The training program, I would say in general, is for people who are studying or practicing 3 hours a week or more and who have some kind of desire to get better. They don't have to be like, I'm trying to be a pro. They don't have to be in a rush to it. But they're people who have some kind of inclination, like, I want to be better. That's all it has to be, right? Like, I would like to get better. I'm trying to learn something. So those are the people who are in the training program. And that training program has 22 different levels to it, approximately 22 different training programs. The first training program is the 0 to 300 level. The second training program is the 300 to 400 level. Third program is 400 to 500 level. And so it's every 100 points from there on up. So that means we have a plan for people rated, 100 in mind, right? It's a fairly simple plan, but one doesn't need to have some minimum level to be someone who says, I enjoy chess and I want to spend some time getting better at it. That's just a question of, attitude and what somebody feels like. Elise, you have a tournament tomorrow. What's the number one thing to have a good time at a tournament? It's to sleep in advance. Go get some sleep. We always love to have you here with us, but go get some sleep. Yes, you can always improve your calculations, Zobayan. I can improve my calculation. The best player whose training I know something about, the best player who I sort of know, like, very intimately, like their training, their work, and all that, is like 2,700 and works on their calculation every day to improve it. Yeah, sleep's super important, Rin Twin. You can do all the anything you want, all the training, all the this or that, and you'll never be able to perform super well without sleeping. Not only that, Rin Twin, you could get really good at chess, then not sleep, and then you won't be able to play well, even if you've already done the improving before. You see what I mean? Like imagine for 2 years, you sleep well, you study, you practice, you get good, and then for 2 weeks, you don't sleep much. You'll immediately go back to being bad. In fact, just 2 days without sleeping, you could probably go back to being bad. Like Magnus Carlsen could spend 2 or 3 days, not sleep at all, and become sort of bad at chess. I mean, I guess a different version of bad at chess than the rest of us. But, yeah. Okay, so the knight goes back to d6, trying to escape. The bishop gets attacked again. Black sacks a rook to try and help fight for control over here. Rook takes a6, knight c4. Queen c6. Black is back in the game with that exchange sacrifice. Bravo, Blazing Dynamo. I did not think you were going to avoid this pawn queening. Magnus with 5 days of no sleep would still beat Masters? No. No. 5 days of zero sleep. I mean, he might not even be able to sit up in a chair. Let me ask a doctor. Doctor? Doctor? Question for you. If someone didn't sleep at all for 5 days, A, would they be alive? B, could they still do anything? Like, could they walk? Could they sit up? Could they play a game of chess?
I think they would still be alive.
120 hours.
The longest time that someone has gone without sleep, I think, is something like 19 days. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. A long time. I don't know if they would die. Beyond that, that person didn't die.
Like, they might die later, right? Even if they
Just
didn't
fell
immediately die?
asleep. I mean,
They just fell asleep.
there are long-term cognitive problems with the lack of sleep.
So they won't only be dumb after 5 days, they might be dumb forever.
Well, you're more likely to be dumb forever if you consistently don't sleep.
Yeah,
They might make up for that. I don't know.
Right.
I can't speak to the 5 days in a row not sleeping. What was the second part of your question?
Okay, here's somebody saying there was somebody who played computer games for 4 days and just died at their PC on the 4th day.
But died of what?
Of not sleeping.
No, clearly that. Yeah.
Okay.
And you're wondering how it would impact.
Yeah, they're saying Magnus Carlsen could not sleep for 5 days and still beat Masters. That was just one person's perspective, and I think he wouldn't even know where he was after 5 days.
I mean, there have been studies on, they keep people from sleeping and then they have them do tests.
Yeah.
And so there's been plenty of studies showing decrease in like working memory, decrease in concentration.
Yeah.
All kinds of things just after a little bit of lack of sleep. So.
Right.
But Magnus is so good that what does that translate to?
Right.
He'll still be a master.
What?
I mean, what like?
Okay.
Okay, think about it this way. Like when you're playing blindfolded chess.
Yeah.
How many can you play before you start to lose?
How many games can I play?
How many people?
How many people can I play at once blindfolded?
Right, but their levels matter, right?
The level matters. If they're good enough to beat me to begin with, they could beat me when I'm blindfolded.
Right, but let's say they're as you stretch your brain by concentrating on lots of different games.
Right.
The level that could beat you decreases.
So normally if I play blindfold, I probably drop from like 2400 level to about 2100 level. I probably lose about 300 points. But then adding more and more games, I've never actually hit a point where like I fell apart. So I don't know what that number would be. I've played up to 12 games and it never was an issue.
I guess the question is, how many games has Magnus played blindfolded at once?
Yeah, I don't know.
Has that affected his performance? I guess it depends on how his brain works.
Yeah. 50 hours. That's not 50 hours is just more than 2 days. We also had a question, are puzzles the best way to improve calculation? To some extent, yes. It depends which puzzles, though. Okay, so black is just resigned here because this pawn can't be stopped anymore. You guys see that? The rook is going to trade with this rook, and then the pawn will queen. The knight has 2 different hops to get back to defending c8, but this rook is covering both of them. So the game ended here. Interestingly, after queen c6, I was thinking maybe black could try and resist with this queen trade followed by rook c8. But now I see that after rook b1, you just can't stop the plan of rook b8, can you? So white would still have queened the pawn and won, even here. Yeah, if there were one advice that I would go back and give my younger self, it would be to sleep more. That would probably be like the number one thing. You know, when they ask that question, if you could tell your younger self, give them any advice or tell them anything, and sometimes people are like, oh, I would tell them that this thing became worth more. I would tell them what to invest in or whatever. But whatever. I would tell myself, oh yeah, sleep some more. Okay, so great game for Wesley Soy and Blazing Dynamo. Bravo to them both. And let's pop open another game, shall we? We shall. Let me go to my club again and open up the other tournament. Current tournaments, 1600 plus.
I sent you a study on sleep deprivation and chess playing, but it looks at long-term sleep patterns and ability to increase your FIDE, your score, David.
Okay.
Enjoy that.
Thank you.
It's in Norwegian study.
So Rainbow Teddies, the best way to improve your calculation, it depends on your level, right? So somebody who's under 1200 in general still needs to increase their vocabulary of tactical patterns. Pretty exciting starting position here for this game. King in the center of the board. Material looks about equal. So I would guess that white has the advantage based on the black king's position, but that requires, energetic play to prove it. So up to 1200, the main thing that needs to be done is learning tactical patterns, because you can't come up with everything just move by move if you haven't seen any patterns. You need pattern recognition. They're like the building blocks. They're like, the letters, the sounds of a language, which you have to know how to put different syllables together before you can start with words and sentences. There's some component of chess skill that has something to do with some kind of talents. But yes, I know the color of every square, Dabo, even though I can't picture a chessboard. So yeah, if you spent a lot of time with the chessboard, you start to know where things are. Okay, Rainbow is about 1900. You're finishing the endgame manual. And you have an opening repertoire. Chess.com puzzle rating of 3,400. Yeah. And you don't know where to go next. So at your level, to get better, the kind of puzzles you need to be doing are puzzles where, if you could find them, the best puzzles for you are puzzles where you don't even know what kind of puzzle it is. In other words, you don't know if there's a winning move or not. You don't know if it's a drawing move. You don't know if it's a positional move or a tactical move. You need positions where really you don't know what the goal is in the position. And And then you need to be doing somewhat harder problems, right? Not like 30-second tactics or 1-minute tactics. You want to be working on your ability to calculate for, 10, 15 minutes. So you want to be doing harder puzzles. You could maybe do something like what I do already at your level, which is you could do I'd take a set of 6 puzzles and I try and solve them in an hour. So 60 minutes, and there's a variety. There are some that you can solve in 2 or 3 minutes and some where you need 15 minutes and you don't know which are which. So you don't know exactly how to allot your time. It's a lot of times the problem with how people do puzzles, Rainbow Teddies, one of the biggest problems is that they do it based on solving tactics in the context of they know they're solving puzzles, right? Versus how would they think during an actual game. So in other words, I know it's a puzzle. I know it's a tactic. I know it's a win. So they don't need to consider moves like H3, right? They're just saying oh, I bet it's, Queen D5 or F4. You know what I mean? They know which kind of move is going to be the right kind of move. They know what the level is because it's been selected out for them, right? So if the puzzle is a 2000 level puzzle or a 2400 level puzzle or a 1600 level puzzle, right? So when you see people blasting through Puzzle Rush or Chess.com tactics puzzles and things like that, often they're just playing the move that they can guess off instinct is the right kind of move for that puzzle, but they haven't calculated whether or not it works. So when I give my students puzzles, I always give them within a set of puzzles some positions where there's no correct move. And so all the tactical moves are actually failures. You could call them red herrings or whatever, wrong directions to go. Folks, this stuff that I'm saying mostly applies to Rainbow Teddy and other players at, a sort of 1800 plus level. For those under 1,000, this is too hardcore. So you can just hear it to know what's going on, but it doesn't necessarily apply to you, right? The same advice doesn't apply to everybody. So for you, it's important to work on calculating harder positions where you don't know for sure what the goal is, whether you're winning, drawing, slightly worse, positional, tactical, whatever. And you want to jot down some notes about your thought process. I normally add, if I'm doing that, I'll add time because it takes time to write stuff down, right? So if it's a puzzle where I should be calculating for maybe 15 minutes, I would give myself 20 to 25 minutes if I'm writing stuff down. What I do after I do the puzzle is I play out my calculation on a board and see what I got right or wrong. And so I'm constantly taking in some feedback and some on what I'm getting wrong and then building patterns of it, right? I'm missing defensive resources or something like that. But then it gets even more specific, right? I'm missing backwards queen moves for the attacker, or I'm missing forward knight moves for the defender. I'm not seeing that they've got aggressive resources. And it can get even more and more specific than that as you start to see what you're missing. And once you know what you're missing, it's a step towards getting better at all that. I don't know a lot of resources that are like that, Rainbow Teddies, but here's how I generate those positions for myself and how I have my students generate those positions for themselves. I take games, either of mine or of GM's, random games, and I play through them until I reach a point where I say, oh, this looks like a critical position to me. You see what I mean? So you play through the game till you reach a point where you think, if I were playing this game, this is where I would probably stop and calculate. All right, take that position. If you want to, you can then wait to do the puzzle and go find 5 or 6 other positions and make yourself a sheet, right? Or a test with 5 or 6 positions to do one after the next. Or you can just solve that one for 15, 20 minutes, write down your answer, and then go pick your next position. That's the main resource that I do because I could never really find books, sites, or resources that did this properly. So that's what I've done and recommended to my students. I can tell you, not that I'm particularly trying to sell anything to you or whatever, right? But this is like the clear answer to your question. Then on Chess Dojo, we've created a limited number of tests which are like this. So if I go to tactics tests on Chess Dojo, depending on your level, you'd be like 1,500 to 2,000 tests. We have at least 10 of these tests. They're 1-hour tests. And in these tests, you don't necessarily know the goal. There's a mix of stuff. You get 1 hour to solve 10 problems. So it's 6 minutes per problem. And you'll definitely be getting tired and running out of time on these tests. They're very difficult. I think that a lot of people did not enjoy doing them because they're truly difficult. They don't make you feel good about yourself like a Maiden 2 on chess.com, after which it tells you, you're a genius, 3,400, you know? Like, it's going to tell you your tactics rating is 1,900 or your tactics rating is 1,850 or something like that when you're done with the test. So it will be a much more sober assessment. But that's a limited number of positions and tests for you to test yourself with, right? Given the work you might need to do. That's not a ton of material. I'm going to grab some water. Excuse me, please. Are you still working on that funding thing? You finished it?
The funding? No, I was working on I finished that.
Congratulations. That's great. All right, so with bishop g4, black was threatening to take this knight. White kicks the bishop away and potentially could try to play knight d5 next move. I have to calculate, though. I mean, it's a classical game, and these players are at a level where they can take their time to really calculate some stuff, right? Rainbow Teddies, what about knight d5 right away? Was that already playable? You thought f3 was committing and create some weaknesses. But this is like a position where I would do some very precise calculation versus just a general thought. Although, I mean, it's useful to have general thoughts about what you're doing as well. But what about knight takes d5? Instead of worrying about, black's threats on us, what about our threat that we were trying to play knight d5? Did this move stop it? So why don't you all take a moment and tell me if you think that white could play knight d5 or not. I'm doing the same. I'm calculating. How about you, Rainbow Teddies? Was this question a good level for you about knight d5? Wow. Crazy. All right. I'm going to show you what I calculated. I think you did pretty good, Zobayan. So you can compare your calculation with me. So knight d5. My first thought, there's like two main branches for black, right? They could capture one or the other of these pieces. My queen is overworked defending two minor pieces, right? So bishop takes, I didn't look very far at. I thought knight takes knight, check. Queen takes, and I take back. And I was happy with that from white's perspective. I won a pawn, right? Traded a couple pieces. King's still pretty open. Queen's on the board. I was happy. I didn't go any further than that. Much harder, knight d5, queen d5, and they take here. So at first I wanted to go queen e5 and win a rook. But then king d7 defends the rook like this. And then here it was tricky to find anything super clear immediately. So then I thought, what if I played check here? Staying on the light squares to complement the dark squared bishop. And then immediately I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy how close we are to trapping the opponent's king. So I calculated here. I went check. Now, I played king e6 because I saw that king e8, queen c6, the king's caught on these diagonals. And this is like a theme that the king can never allow this queen c6 because then you grab this. So I played king e6, and then I checked the king, and the king came back here. And I found I've got this move as well. And, you know, I found this kind of perpetual. And I think this is what Zobayan was referring to as perpetual. Another variation, which I actually didn't properly notice when I was calculating before, is this bishop c7 move. But I do think it basically just fails to bishop takes bishop, because if queen takes, you have rook d1 check, and they lose their queen for very, very little. And they could try some other fancy move here, like not taking your bishop, but I would guess that against any such move, you play rook d1 with a continuing checkmating attack, followed by queen e4 and etc. So for a while, I couldn't beat this perpetual, right? So I was going like king e6, queen e4 here. And, you know, I couldn't get queen f5, c6, queen b7. I couldn't do any better. I came up with the idea of c6 check. With the idea, look at this. If the king goes here, weirdly, I think we have a checkmate. Just barely, with not that many pieces, right? But you see how the diagonals are taking turns on the light squares and the dark squares. It's super cool. So black would have to go here. I go rook d1, takes, king here, and I triumphantly win black's queen. And I wasn't very triumphant because I knew I didn't have enough piece, like that I'd given too many pieces to win a queen, right? So in this endgame, black is pretty much winning unless white has an immediate perpetual check, because two rooks and bishop is too much. But then, when I was ready to give up on it, an amazing thing happened, Zobayan. I thought, what if we changed the move order? And instead of playing the forcing c6 and feeding the bishop to our opponent, what if we just played rook to d1? And surprisingly, against this move, I did not find any defense for black. And I may have miscalculated, because this is pushing my calculation a little bit, given the time that I took, right? Which was, I don't know, we spent maybe 3 minutes calculating here. If I spent 20 minutes, I could be a little more sure and go a little further. But basically, okay, they could take it or not. Either way, we've got a rook here. So the threat from white, threat number 1 is something like bishop e7 check. King moves, you take the queen, and then you've got queen against 1 rook and bishop, which is easily winning with the black king exposed as well, right? And a couple extra pawns for white. Just if black allowed bishop e7 and takes the queen, it's over. So then the defenses that I thought of for black were like queen c8 and queen e8 getting off the dark squares. I also wondered if the king could move off of the file of the rook. The answer is no, right? We've got this covered, this covered, this covered. The only square is here, and then queen a8, right? So the king can't get off the file of the rook. Well, that's promising for white right away. I know we've given a full rook for this attack. But then I tried queen over here. And that takes away the flight square for the king. So I found I could just drop back, and it's literally checkmate. I tried queen over here. And now this c6 thing doesn't quite work because they can block here on e6, right? But I found a win here anyway, I think. And it was dropping back my bishop again. Forcing the king to c8 and then taking here. I think I looked at rook e8 for a moment, and then I played bishop check. And if the king goes to c7, we can take the queen with check, so it doesn't matter that our queen is lined up with their rook. And if the king went here, we could take this again and then take the queen. So I didn't find any defense for black in this position here. I thought white was winning at this point. The chat has grown very silent. Once, chat's got a lot to say when it's like, how should we improve? And like, how do we improve our visualization, our calculation? And then I'm like, here, do this exercise. And it's like, I know if you're 500 Rin Twin, this was aimed at the 1900s. So I understand that calculation could explode what you think people calculate during their games. But hopefully that was couched at approximately the right level for Teddy, the rainbow dude who had come here with the related question. If your synapses are firing, that's already, good stuff. So Zobayan, you're wondering, would I have trusted my calculations? I thought that in the 3 minutes or so that we spent calculating, or however long it was, sometimes you don't have a clear sense of time when you're calculating, might have been 4 minutes or something. I was about 80% that I was right, 20% that I was missing stuff. Does that make sense, Zobayan? But like if I had 20 minutes on the clock, then I could do some more double checking, push it, and really convince myself. If I were really in time pressure, like I had 5 or 6 minutes on the clock and I chose to spend 3 or 4 of them calculating this and then had to choose whether or not to go for it, I think I would go for it. In general, when I have to choose, I choose to trust myself. Should we computer check me and see if I would have gambled correctly or incorrectly? This is why I would really rather have 20 minutes. With 20 minutes, I can be like 98% sure of this kind of a calculation. All right, I'm going to turn on the computer and check myself on knight d5. Knight takes d5 winning. it says black's best move is rook to g8, which is obviously bad for black. So let us try this variation. Queen d5 is correct. It says black's best move is rook a6 or rook g8, but let's assume they take the piece because otherwise they're just lost without any calculation. Now queen e4 is correct. King d7, queen b7, correct. Here, if black, it says black's best move is either bishop c7 or queen c7, losing, +8 for white. King e6, queen e4 is correct. King d7 is correct. By the way, folks, I didn't mention this before, but king f6, I had calculated bishop e5. The king has to go back to the e file. You could take the rook and then continue your attack, or you can go take the queen. I didn't look further than this because everything's winning. So king d7. And now the last thing to check is whether rook d1 is correct, and it is. Rook fd1. Computer thinks bishop g3 is a second winning move. Of course, rook fd1 and rook ad1 are both winning. They're the same thing. But apparently there's another way to win, which is bishop to g3. Also works. But rook d1 and bishop d1, rook d1, and there's just no defense. Yeah, game over. Okay. So, Elise, you had a similar confidence interval as me, 85% sure that you could do it and you'd be winning, and you saw the rook d1 move. I was about 80% sure at that kind of, with that amount of time used. I'm about 80%, I'm more than 80% sure that Elise should have gone to bed 45 minutes ago. The calculation is very promising today, but you're not going to calculate this well tomorrow, unfortunately. How does bishop g3 win? I think basically the way bishop g3 wins here is that you're making that same rook d1 threat. It's the same as playing rook d1 in a different move order. The king's cut off in every direction, right? The only safe square is c8, but then there's queen takes rook. And if they take this rook, you can play rook d1 instead of recapturing, right? Force the king over here and then mate. So bishop g3, and there's just basically no defense against rook d1. ACS. That's how it is. Yeah, very similar to rook d1 first. But my priority, the move order I would always first look at would be rook d1, because I know I want the rook on d1. I don't know if I want my bishop on e5 or g3 or e7, depending how black defends, right? So, okay, bishop d7 played by black after f3. White gets the pawn anyway. Bishop e6. I would think that in this position, black should have tried bishop e6, by the way, to try and defend this pawn, you know. Knight d5, bishop e6. White could play knight f6 check or e4. Nice move from white, holding the tension. Wow, high class. Tied dog golden. Queen d4, bone-crunching move for black with tactical problems here. And even here, white even has the theme of c6, c7, as well as all this. Ay, ay, ay. The queen. Black trades, white takes back. And there's our current position. Black's problems include the king being in the middle of the board, the rook not being able to develop, and I don't know if the one on a7 counts. f3 is winning without crazy calculations. I suppose so. I mean, my thought was that if f3, bishop e6, it's not that easy. Like, I know white's kind of winning off the black king position, but you haven't yet struck the blow, which is why, for me, when I'm in a situation like this, I look for the move that crushes my opponent. I'm willing to do one crazy calculation and win the game versus just sort of like keep the ball in play for a while and hope that eventually something occurs to me. You know what I mean? Like, my general experience of what works best, at least for me, is to be willing to do the work versus hoping to win without having to do anything really tough. Hey, thanks for the raid, SC Games Live. Hey, hey, hey. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Friday Night Fights. Oh, Save-A-Lot, I recognize you. All right, so queen d4, the trade, b6, and black simply resigned without playing it out. Too disgusted with that position. Yeah. Definitely a rough position here for black. Something bad is going to happen at some point. I agree. We're going to close that bullet game down. Zobayan, you think c6 and can't stop mate. I think queen d6 is still a little bit complicated there, no? Yeah, I was also thinking queen e5, then c6, then the king comes here. It keeps this structure very nice and keeps this bishop sort of like weird over here. But it's not, it's not a knockout blow yet, but it's logical. And maybe with queen a5 it is a knockout, actually, because the king can't go any further. Just have to start dropping pieces here, yeah? I hadn't seen that far yet either. But that looks pretty good. I only found it because I was thinking like, oh, rook e8 and they'll take our knight. Okay, queen f5. Queen f5. Right, I was also looking at knight d4 as a first instinct, just keeping white's position nice. Yeah, thank you, SC Games Live. I hope everything's good with you. Much appreciation for the raid. We're doing our normal Friday night thing where people play classical chess against each other. 21, bishop e7. Yeah, that move is pretty powerful once the knight is defended by e4. I thought about that move the move before, right? Like right here. I thought of this, and then after queen d5, it doesn't really do much. Indeed. Enjoy your games tomorrow. It sounds like you're playing tomorrow. So, yeah, so defending the knight made sense there. Then after rook a7, I think Novest is probably right that bishop e7 now would be a strong move with the knight defended. Should be basically a knockout. Yeah. Okay, so black got into troubles when the king got uncastled. So if you want to see how it happens, Zobayan, it's probably right around here. Bishop check, king e7. So it must be some reason that black couldn't just block. Right, the concern is that b4 might win material. But bishop d7, you could play here. You could, I think white can win a pawn with b4. So you could lose a pawn. Reasonable. Maybe here you need to trade the bishop before you take on c5, so you're not leaving that fork hanging. You were thinking that against b4 you have knight d3. With the game keeps going, but it looks like as soon as white takes here, you actually have to trade to be able to recapture like this. No, that's what it looks like to me. I think that's where it started. Right, so you had knight c5, got surprised by bishop b5, and then you had to scramble because something's going wrong here. And b4 is coming, basically. Like, even after, like, how does king e7 stop b4? a6, white took. Oh, because the bishop's got nowhere to go to get away from the knight? I see. So you force at least a trade, but then your king is caught in the middle, and the position's lost. Even here, Novest, yeah, as you're saying, king f8 might have had a much better chance. I don't know all white's options. I'm sure white has something good, honestly. But even something like this, the ability to play king g7 and develop your rook is like incomparably better than the bishop d6, king e8 in the game, right? Like, if that's +3 or whatever, this might be plus, 1.5. It might be half as bad or something. Like, you still have some weaknesses around your king, and you're still likely to lose one of these two pawns. So, like, white's pretty good. And by that measure, you're definitely better off just playing something like this. Bishop here, knight d5, queen d5. And just play the game down a pawn. I mean, that's certainly better than the stuff that happened. Well, this is one way to not be stuck with an IQP. Just lose it and keep playing. I'll say this. A lot of the times in an IQP position, if you just lose the pawn in the middle game, instead of hanging on to it until the end game and getting really passive and ground, if you just give it away in the middle game, often... then you're just down a pawn, but, you play with active pieces and you still have a game. Yeah. You don't have compensation here. G5 is not looking great. But you've got much more of a game than those situations in the game where your king was just stuck. So I think... And if you're going to lose a pawn anyway with that complicated king e7, a6, a b5, and then, like, he could always play knight takes b5 throughout, he or they, sorry. But, white can always at least win this b pawn throughout the rest of this game, right? So, like, you're going to be down a pawn. No need to play king e7 to not be down a pawn. Let me see. I'm not an expert on this line. I don't even know about g5 here, but it's not super logical to play c6 and c5 to me this early in a game. You're black, and now you're spending 2 tempi on a c-pawn. I don't really understand the point of g5 here, though, even. Like, you're not playing knight e4. Yeah, I just don't understand the point. Like, I don't know why we're not just castling and playing rook e8. But, yeah, I definitely don't understand bishop b4, queen's gambits very well. I don't know why the bishop went to b4 in this order instead of, bishop e7. Bishop g3, knight g5. And maybe that makes sense. Let me see here. Knight h5. Okay, that makes sense to me. That move would combine with g5 in a way that makes sense to me, yeah? Bishop b4 looks more active. I mean, do you want to trade on c3? Because bishop b4 is only more active if there are some ideas around bishop takes c3. If you don't want to take on c3, then why would you go bishop b4, right? Yeah, knight h5 makes sense. Like, the main way people play these positions as black is they go bishop e7, knight e2, and then knight h5 here, with or without castles. Sometimes they castle first. But the idea is that they keep the bishop from escaping. They just make a trade. Like this. That takes, you know, some of the, just trading pieces is often how people start this off as black. It takes some of the sting out of, you know, the f3, e4 plan. And just untangles this diagonal where your queen is stuck on d8. Normally against this, people will try to still play the f3, e4 plan, I think. So they'd play like queen d2. Oh, queen b1, hitting h7. And then after knight f6 or something, you want to play b4. So then, like, a6, a4. So yeah, white seems a bit better here. It seems your opponent knew this opening pretty well, by the way. No vest for the jury. Ty Dog seems to know a lot of the themes for white and black here. Why is white allowed to play bishop g5 when bishop f6 isn't necessarily beneficial? White's not actually planning to take on f6 normally. They just wanted to make sure the bishop's outside of this pawn structure because it can be pretty bad on c1 and d2. And normally they try to keep the bishop on the board for a while. Yeah. But like situations in which white might trade it will always be for some concrete reason. Like, let's say black goes knight f8 here. Here's one position where white might trade the bishop. And the reason would be they play b4 when they take your bishop off there. But in general, they're not looking to trade the bishop. You can also play bishop f4. An early bishop f4 line compared to bishop g5. Black will often play c5. And so the bishop on g5 makes the d pawn weaker and harder for black to play c5. Black gets more room here with c5 like this. And then you sometimes get these kind of positions as black. So this is like, I mean, people do play bishop f4, no best for the jury, right? But this is what they let black get by playing bishop f4. You can find games in this line, for example, in the Kramnik-Leko World Championship match. Brissago 2003, 2004, something like that. So, yeah. Yeah, you've got more choices for your dark squared bishop, actually. It's your better bishop, Noves, for the jury. If we look at this position here and imagine that at some point white's going to play e3, what are the options for this bishop? Right? Its best options are f4 and g5, and they're both fine. What are the best options for this bishop? Its best option is d6. Second best option is e7. Third best option, I guess, is b4, to my mind. I understand there are bishop b4 lines that are really, GM level and that make sense. But, normally bishop g5 is your best spot. When they play bishop g5, sometimes you go to e7 because, like bishop d6, knight d5 doesn't look good. You can play c6, trying to prepare this. And then like queen c2, you can play like this if you want to. But sometimes it can be a little annoying. White starts to threaten taking on h7. You have to make a pawn weakness. Whereas if you had the bishop on e7, you could just play knight d7. With your bishop on e7 against bishop f6, you have knight f6. But here there's bishop h7 because of this diagonal. So white's not looking to trade this, but white is making this little threat. And sometimes it gets a little concession out of black with an early g6 or h6. Right, Noves, for the jury. So, just like white didn't want the bishop blocked in by the e-pawn, you don't necessarily want this bishop blocked in by the knight, right? So another way you can play this position, in the move order you played, c6 is one of the best move orders, I think. After e3, you could try this move. This is another main variation to get the bishop out and then follow up with knight d7. Now, what you have to be ready for if you play bishop f5 are moves like queen f3 and queen b3. Okay? And in this position, I believe queen f3 is a little bit better than queen b3, but they've got a similar idea. They basically are going to double your pawns on f6, right? So queen b3 is to bring this queen away and then take on f6. But the line that I've seen more GMs play is queen f3, bishop g6, bishop f6, queen f6, queen f6, gf6. So this is a big line. It looks like this is what Tie Dog, or it seems that this is something Tie Dog is familiar with from the white side. So then it's a battle for whether or not white gets control over the f5 square. It's kind of like a strategic middle game battle. But this is completely playable for black. At the GM level, the games almost always end in draws. The black players know how to play it and just don't get beat. All their pieces have squares. So losing time to queen f3. Well, it's very specific that white tries to double your pawns right away. They're not saying like, I'm up in time now, let me like show you my development lead after this, right? Because if black plays bishop e7 and castles, black's very solid. Your queen's, it's arguable whether your queen has improved white's time because it's blocking its knight from the best square, and your bishop can't go to d3 anymore. And if your bishop goes to e2, your queen's just kind of stuck out here. And where is this knight going? So I wouldn't say queen f3 necessarily wins time, right? Because the tempo, the queen's just in the way, and the best thing for white, I believe, is to just trade that queen off immediately. And if you count the development here, you'll see they each have one piece out, and it's white's move. So the development is exactly like in the starting position, right? 1/2 tempo for white. So anyway, so bishop f5 is like fine at this point. Or you can play here after e3. You could play something like bishop e7 or bishop d6, which are fine as well. As far as I know. I mean, there might be like a tenth of a pawn difference on one of these moves at like a super GM level. I'm not a big theory hound expert, but these are the moves that look super logical to me. To me, bishop b4 doesn't make sense because I think that bishop is worth more than a knight in this case. And like rushing to trade here, if white doesn't even spend a tempo on a3, I don't see it. I feel like your dark squares are going to be weak. That said, there are some ideas associated with it, right? Like going h6, g5, knight e4. But your opponent played a move order with the knight on e2 where the c3 square is well defended, and they even had bishop d3 in so that your knight's not very secure on e4. There might be a different move order without your knight bd7. Maybe bishop b4 right away. And then if bishop d3... I don't know if any of this makes sense, but coming here quickly, like this maybe. I don't know. I don't feel like this is like a main line here for black. Seems just slightly off. But I know there are these Rogozin Queen's Gambits with Bishop b4, and they're one of the lines one of the last lines of the Queen's Gambit for me to learn or understand anything about. Yeah, a lot of people play this modern move order with Bishop e7, b4, knight f6. Yeah. Very common. So then white has to play the bishop f4 variation, no vest, but black has spent an early tempo on bishop e7, so c5 is less amazing, right? The knight's not yet on f6, and the bishop will have to move twice. So then you go here, and you get this. So, if white just goes knight f3 here, yeah, you could do that. So you're thinking if knight f6, you want to then play bishop g5. Hey, Shirogorov. Did you enjoy this week's tournament? Seems like the kind of thing you would have enjoyed. My board was just taken away from me somehow. Yeah, no vest for the Drury. We should do that sometime. I only found out about Grenka today, Shirogorov. So I have to think about it and discuss with my partner and family and all that. Because, it would be traveling to another continent without the kids, substantial time. It's not easy for a parent to just be gone from their family, right? I'm very tempted, but there's another part of me that's like meant to organize, a smaller 960 tournament just around here, just play something local, less costly, I like environmentally and economically, I'm very conservative about how much people should be flying around the world to do the things that amuse them. Like it's a big cost to humanity to have planes flying around, and yeah, I have to weigh it, like, of course, it's fun and special to me. No, I'm back in California right now, Shirogorov. I was in France last year for a year, but I'm back in California. If I were in France, I would hop on a train to Germany 100%, like guaranteed I would go play that thing. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, the whole idea that people like fly across the world to, do a little fun thing for themselves to amuse themselves when, lots of people don't have enough resources. That's why, like, when I went to France, I went for a year, I didn't go for a week. I was like, if we're going to use the resources of the world, like, we're going to do a whole thing, where the kids have a life-changing experience for a full year, where we can, maybe take the trains here and there and see some other parts of Europe. What do you mean by visit, Zobayan? Costly? Yeah, costly. Exactly. So I'm really torn about doing something like that, right? And so I think, like, what if I don't need to play against the best players in the world. I just want to play some Chess 960. What I should really do is organize a weekend tournament here in Berkeley. Trains use electricity too, but like much less, Zobayan, much less. And it's much more on the scale of something that can be like handled by more renewable energy sources, right? Yeah, there may be scientific solutions to these kind of technologies, right? I just feel like planes are probably I think they don't have electric planes yet, right? So they're using fuel, and it's quite a lot. I don't really feel so bad about. I don't feel bad, period, about taking trains around. I feel pretty comfortable with that. Perhaps wrongly. I mean, I'm not like an expert on things, right? That's just telling you where I'm at, and you feel free to correct me. Feel very free to correct me. I am definitely here for that. I mean, I hear that like Germany turned off their nuclear power, right? And then they had to get fossil fuels from Russia or something. I did hear that. But Shirogorov is saying the same thing that my instinct was, which is that something that sends you up into the air is going to take a lot more energy than something that rolls you along a track. Right. Nuclear is great, except if at some point you have an accident, right? But 99.99% of the time it's amazing. I don't know how the risks and things play out. So I don't have a strong opinion on it. My understanding is that solar power is pretty darn clean. So and I feel like France, which is where I was living last year, has a pretty clean energy system. Our immediate problem is not accidents, it is CO2. I hear you on that. So anyway, I've only had a few hours to think about this Granca tournament. I don't know that I will play. France is largely nuclear. Okay. It's one of the things I love about chat. Like, together, there's so much useful knowledge in the chat. It's really cool. It seems like the games for Friday night fights are done. I started streaming at 4 a.m. today for the last round of the Grand Slam, the Weissenhaus Grand Slam. So I'll probably wrap up the show a little bit early, pretty soon, given that there are no more games to look at right here. I am not pumped on slave labor in mines. Yeah.
That's a very good, yeah, that's a very simple comparison, Shirogorov. Yeah, put me on the back of your bicycle or like a, a sled or a cart versus carry me in the air. Okay, Bun Mizo Bayan. Yeah, I'm probably shutting this down in a minute anyway. You'll never get your money back on the batteries. In other words, you lose money setting up solar energy. I had solar panels installed on my house maybe 2 years ago. And I definitely don't think I'm making money back on them like ever. And I didn't even get like batteries, Yeah, well, Far Eastern, good for you for playing. And I encourage you to continue winning that fight, to not feel terrible about the game not going well, so to speak. White won with the King's Gambit, but a weird positional game. Okay. I mean, that sounds kind of interesting, Far Eastern. Maybe there's something interesting and cool in there. Yeah. The other thing, Boondock Striker, which is sick, I don't know where your brother-in-law is or what your experience is with solar panels, but we deal with PG&E here in California, and they have a monopoly, pretty much, right? They own the entire electrical grid. So we've got solar panels, but we still have to pay to be connected to the grid. And so everyone was encouraged, or I mean, people were to some extent encouraged to get solar panels because it would be maybe good for the environment, help with energy production. Or who knows what the agenda was, but anyway, there was, right? There was some, incentivizing and pushing people towards doing that. And then we get these messages from PG&E saying, we're sorry, we have to increase our rates just for being connected to the grid, even for people not getting electricity, because so many people have been signing up for, so many people have been getting solar panels that we're not making enough money. So because they're not making enough money, they have to charge the people not getting service. I have not said this the most elegantly possible, but hopefully I've evoked the situation for you all, where they start charging you, $20, $30, $35, $40 just for sitting there not getting a service. Because and they have to raise their prices. Why? Because so many people are not using their service. They have to charge the people not using their service more and more. Right? Ouch. Does that mean, Charlie, that you were playing music tonight? Yeah, Shirogrov, I don't want to pretend to have done an extensive political science type analysis on the situation. I don't know exactly how PG&E got into the position they're in and what would be better and this or that. But I can just say, from my very limited personal experience of it, it feels disgusting, right? I don't feel good about the whole process, of getting the solar panels, then having the financial stuff change. And obviously I didn't do it mainly for financial reasons. It's just it hurts to still get these high bills when you've already invested
And well, anyway, you see what I mean? Like it doesn't feel good. I don't want to, nobody can afford their electric bills, and even the people who have solar panels can't afford their electric bills. It's just crazy. It's so high. How much PG&E had been going up. And you're gigging regularly. That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. That's so cool. And yeah, Charlie, Boondock had the biggest win of their life today. You get charged extra for using less gas, right? It's just like, what's being done to us? Silliness. You pay more for your tags because you're not spending as much on gas. Where they should be thanking you for not using up gas, right? Oh, man. Okay, well, I think we should take advantage and call it a night a little bit early here, right? We had some great games. Games are done. I started at 4 a.m. as I said above. Let's just get some rest and some sleep. Tomorrow morning there's more chess to be had, right? So that's another reason to get to bed. We've got viewer rapid tournaments tomorrow morning.